When was the last time you saw somebody collecting scrap metal in Florida? Probably during the last recession. The only difference is that now scrap metal is worth exactly what it was 10 years ago, but rents are twice that. It's no longer a secret that Florida is having the worst off season it's had in a while. Our YouTube channel was the first reporting on the story, but now it's pretty much national headlines. Everybody knows what I've been telling you guys for a while. Of course, some people are always going to be in denial, like this person right here. He calls me a liberal crybaby, says people are moving in droves to Florida. Construction is booming, especially new home construction. If anybody has ever seen me promote liberal ideology, please timestamp it in the video so the rest of us can see it and clearly determine what this person is talking about. This is what Sarasota looks like right now, absolutely empty. At the airport today, 40 Ubers waiting on 4 flights at the Sarasota airport, and this was between 11 and noon, the busiest time of the day. I've never seen that many Uber drivers waiting at the Sarasota Uber lot. On top of that, I left because a fight broke out between Uber drivers that got very violent with many people involved. But even then, it's not as bad as Fort Myers, where nearly 100 Uber drivers are waiting for 7 flights. Today, I averaged out at less than $12 an hour, and that is the worst day I've ever had on Uber. That's about a third of what we were making on Uber 1 year ago at the same time. In the city of Fort Myers, dozens of Mexican restaurants have closed in 2025. In Sarasota, one of the few Uzbeki restaurants that existed in the United States recently closed its doors permanently. In Bonita Springs, Mediterranean Paradise, a great Lebanese restaurant recently closed its doors permanently. In Sarasota, a very popular Hawaiian barbecue restaurant, which the locals loved, recently closed its doors permanently. I personally hadn't tried this restaurant, but the locals on Uber told me it's one of their favorite restaurants and it was on my list. At the University Mall in Sarasota, Kona Grill, extraordinarily popular restaurant, recently closed its doors. These restaurants didn't close their doors because of the hurricane damages. We saw right here on St. Armand Circle, many restaurants have to close due to the hurricane damages. These are restaurants far inland. They're failing because they don't have customers. An Italian sandwich shop in Sarasota, originally from Elizabeth, New Jersey. They got stores all over the country. Well, they had to close the one here recently. The Irish pub at the Lakewood Ranch Town Center recently closed permanently. No hurricane damages here, just not enough customers. Havana Nights in Lehigh Acres, Florida, closed its doors permanently. And if you look at the reviews of these restaurants, these are restaurants that have very high ratings and people in the community love these restaurants. The issue is staff shortages because of immigration law, the increasing cost of everything. On top of that, well, the fact that nobody in Florida has money to eat, and we've scared away all of our international tourists, which played a huge role in the local economy in these communities. Yes, hurricane damage plays a huge role in why some restaurants had to close, predominantly along the coastline. A good example would be Bonita Bill's down in Fort Myers. This is an iconic waterfront restaurant for the locals. It's where I would go when I went to Fort Myers Beach. I guess we could partially blame Hurricane Ian for the closure of this restaurant. The same thing can be said about Caddy's in downtown Bradenton. It suffered a lot of hurricane damages, another place that I frequented often before the hurricanes. With places like Bonita Bill's and Caddy's, without a doubt, these are seafood restaurants that were damaged by the hurricanes. It's understandable that they had to close their doors, but that doesn't really reflect the reality of why all these other restaurants had to close their doors. In fact, in theory, their business should have picked up because now they would have less competition. Annie's Bait and Tackle and Cortez by Bradenton had to close permanently. It's understandable. They're on the water. The issue is that a lot of these restaurants that are closing have been kind of staples of communities for decades now, and all of a sudden now they're struggling. Example, Bambuza's Bar and Grill in Naples, rated 4.6, open for nearly 2 decades, a staple of the city of Naples when it comes to restaurants. They recently had to close their doors permanently. Driving around Southwest Florida recently, it's overwhelming how many for lease signs there are on commercial buildings. I counted 90 today. There's pressure on the people that hold these leases from developers who want to buy these parcels for larger construction projects, high density apartment complexes, wanting to connect smaller commercial parcels to larger ones for larger building projects. So they're forcing long-time commercial tenants out the door because they perceive that there could be more value in demolishing these commercial buildings if some developer wanted that land for a larger project. See, the issue is that while things are tough for the average working class person, it's like if the billionaires were buying out the millionaires, and there is desire to obtain commercial real estate in urban areas in Florida, uniting parcels for larger projects. They're basically forcing the little guy out of the city so that the billionaire guys can come in with their large resorts, large buildings, and larger accommodations. It's a really tragic thing that's happening in Florida. Developers have really got to lease holders, people that own commercial real estate. They've increased the liabilities tremendously on owning any type of real estate, which has in turn forced people to have to sell to the bigger players, and then they're able to snatch up the real estate. So we recently asked on our YouTube channel, why are people selling their properties? It's because of how expensive insurance, maintenance, and everything has become in Florida, where the average person retiring isn't able to afford the state. The average person just can't do it anymore. And that is being done on purpose because, again, people want to force out the little guy. During COVID, a lot of people bought houses in communities like this one right here, holding onto them as investments, thinking that their money was secure in Florida. Others, for tax purposes, wanted to have a homestead in Florida, continue to make New York and California money, but pay Florida taxes. At the end of the day, a lot of those people are having to bail out because the cost of insurance is literally eliminating any potential for profit as the overhead on these properties continues to increase in Florida. These assets are actually becoming liabilities because of how much it's costing to hold on to them. And the state of Florida, despite what you've heard on the media, the reality is that taxes are going up everywhere. Insurance is going up tremendously. Insurance in Florida has become worse than anywhere else in the nation. And it isn't just homeowners insurance, it's auto insurance as well. Basically, as soon as all this capital from California and New York rushed into Florida, the greedy people got to work taking it away instantly. Insurance companies got their hands on politicians, and we saw everything go up from insurance to property taxes, literally milking anything that these investors had brought to Florida to the point where now they're just trying to get rid of these properties. Recently, we're starting to discover that much of the money that was fueling businesses in Florida came from Latin America and international investors. People were pouring all their money into Florida as other countries destabilized, like Ukraine, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Brazil, and Argentina, as well as Colombia. All that money was being funneled into the state of Florida, and it was behind doors fueling a lot of the economy here. Whether you were aware of it or not, both development, businesses, and a good portion of the economy in Florida as a whole on a massive level was being fueled by investments from other countries. Investments that are now afraid to come to the United States. This massive withdrawal of international funds and investing is what's led to the situation we have in Florida today. Many of the builders that are building houses that have had to stop and leave their construction sites halfway in Florida, it may seem to have something to do with the fact that they can't get workers, but in reality it has to do with the fact that somebody in Brazil or the Dominican Republic pulled the plug on the resources, the efficient cash that was moving everything here, the capital itself. In the last few months, real estate in the Dominican Republic has increased dramatically as all the money that was being invested into Florida is now starting to stay in the Caribbean and in Latin America. We've seen the economies of other Latin American countries explode because the money that they were funneling into the United States, places like Florida, is now staying back home. A perfect example is the increase in the prices of real estate in the Dominican Republic over the last few months. Effectively, Florida's economy is destroyed. This has been the worst off season that we have had in a very long time. And don't take my word for it. Most large news agencies are already confirming it, and we're seeing stories on the nightly news about this topic every single day now. Just remember which YouTube channel told you this preliminarily before everybody else, that we were about to have the worst offseason ever, and that's exactly what took place. Hey, you can come to Southern Life and get your information here off the ground first, or you can wait 6 months later when the news finally picks it up. Without a doubt, the consensus between Uber drivers, business owners, people that work in hotels, people that work in hospitality, and anybody who's seen what Florida looks like lately is the same. It's very clear that we are having the worst off-season ever. Tourism in Florida is struggling tremendously, particularly in the southern part of the state. In the winter, people here are anxiously awaiting the return of the snowbirds. However, I'm going to assume that this season will also be the worst we've ever had. People throughout the country are not spending money. Las Vegas, New York, and other international travel destinations are struggling tremendously. It isn't just the state of Florida. The state of Florida is the worst example of a struggling place right now, but it's not the only one. Unfortunately, I will preliminarily suggest the notion that this season will probably be the worst we've ever had. I hope that isn't the case because I depend on tourism for both of my businesses, but the reality is that it doesn't seem very promising. The state of Florida is suffering abnormally. Other states are going to suffer, but not as much as Florida. Florida's dependency on undocumented labor, predominantly from the state and county and municipal level, is tremendous. Currently, the number one employer of undocumented people in the state of Florida isn't builders, it isn't hotels, it isn't Uber. The number one employer of undocumented people in the state of Florida is the state of Florida itself, counties and municipalities. These counties have allowed areas like Lakewood Ranch and Lehigh Acres, which now have hundreds of thousands of people, to remain as unincorporated cities because the county has a monopoly on the contracts for maintenance and landscaping, as well as the fire departments. These are very lucrative kickbacks that local officials are getting for handing out these massive contracts, which effectively are carried out by people who use undocumented labor. Mowing the easements, planting vegetation on the side of the road, it's happening everywhere in Florida right now. All of these projects and all of this roadside maintenance, all of these beautification projects are massive contracts in the hands of county officials. Recently, we've even seen cities and counties start to fight over who gets to control these contracts. Because after all, if these cities were to become incorporated, the county would lose a huge cash cow. And it isn't just about funding local communities. It isn't just about the tax base. It's mostly about the lucrative kickbacks that contractors give to the officials for handing out those very lucrative projects. And right now, the state of Florida is undergoing massive infrastructure investments. This community here is Port Charlotte, Florida. They're starting to put in city water and internet, as well as many other infrastructure facilities that this area didn't have. And all these are very lucrative contracts that the cities and counties are fighting over. And by ensuring that these communities remain unincorporated, they're able to ensure that they keep managing these maintenance contracts and the kickbacks that come along with it. Driving around Port Charlotte, you'll see properties like this one here on the right. The grass is overgrown. These properties have been abandoned. Many people had hurricane damages, leaking roofs, and the insurance companies are just now, over a year later, getting around to deciding if they're going to give people money. Other people like this one here, you can see they're getting rid of couches. People are leaving the United States, and these properties are becoming vacant. Driving through Port Charlotte today, you'll see for rent signs, for lease signs, for sale signs, abandoned houses. When you call many of the rentals, they're going to have a 305 number. That's a Miami area code. These are people that live in Miami and they manage the properties that people in other countries own. These individuals want exorbitant down payments and deposits on rental properties. And many times when people move out, they don't want to give you the money back. After all, you're renting from a middleman who's managing a property from somebody who lives somewhere in Latin America. Just in the last little bit, I've talked to 3 people who have told me that when they went to move out of their informal rents, the landlords refused to return the deposits. Deposits that were into the thousands of dollars. These individuals capitalize on the informality of their rents by charging people massive deposits that these people will never see again. And this is becoming a huge problem for people who rented properties, and when they go to move, they think they're going to get the deposit back. One recent example that I'm going to share with you guys, story I heard on Uber, a pregnant mother wants to relocate into a smaller house because she's a single pregnant mother and she needs that deposit to move into the new place. They won't give it back. I saw the property. There's nothing wrong with it. They refuse to give her the deposit back. This is a mother who's single and pregnant. These are the situations that people are living in Florida because of the racket and the bad business practices that have infiltrated the real estate market in Florida. I'm telling you, if you see a 305 number on a listing, run away from it. These are predatory slumlords. You guys might remember that a few months back during the dry season, we had a dry spell in Florida and most people's lawns died. Well, that is the reason why many people who were trying to leave Florida couldn't get their deposits back, because the landlords accused the tenants of destroying the grass. Go figure, during a drought. These are just some of the petty moves that these slumlords are taking on regular class people who are now trying to take up the vacancy of the more affordable places that are hitting the market, since at the time where they rented, they got screwed dearly by these slumlords. Living in Florida, I know more than well that you are never going to get your deposit back from one of these slumlords, but these people are coming from California, New York, and other states where people have rights, and they thought that Florida was the same thing. Bless their hearts. This is the reality of Florida's economy in 2025. There are definitely struggles. Corruption and dishonest real estate business practices have taken the state of Florida to a new level of shame. The economy here is hurting. It's not a secret anymore. These individuals who are calling me a liberal for saying that things in Florida are going bad must be completely blind to the reality. We're seeing restaurants close. We're seeing businesses struggle. Anybody who does any type of work in Florida knows that this has been the worst off-season ever. Perhaps they haven't cut your disability or your SSI or your pension yet, because, you know, a lot of these people are usually retired people. They're not really in sync with the economy in Florida because they're just retired old people who get a pension from New York or something. So they're not out there, bless their hearts. But for us who live here in Florida and have to hustle every day, the situation here is serious. Recently, I've talked about some of my personal economical challenges while living in the state of Florida recently. And I'm doing it because I want people out there who are going through the same exact struggles that we are to know that they're not the only ones who are literally going crazy because of how difficult life is. I'm doing it to let people who are suffering at home and going through the same things that we're going through know that, hey, we're going through it as well. You're not the only one going through these hardships, because here in the United States, people are very private about their economy, and almost when things like this happen, you're supposed to shut up and not say anything about it and just tough it out quietly. But I'm a very vocal person, and I know that people out there need to hear the things that I'm saying so that they can relate to us and know that the struggle is real for everybody. But unfortunately, the internet is full of wolves and bullies, and they think that now they can make fun of me for some of the things I've said that have happened to me recently and how hard things have got for us. But at the end of the day, I know those bullies and trolls are out there, and they think that their comments might hurt my feelings, but I already knew these comments were coming. It doesn't bother me. I have absolutely no problem with being honest about what's happening here with us, just like it is to you guys at home. I'm not going to stop keeping it real with my audience because a couple of online bullies. At the end of the day, the more they hate, the more I get paid, so it's all good for me.